If a little green is good, more is even better. Now, back to Green is Good with John Shigarian and Mike Brady.
Welcome back to Green is Good, and today we have on the line Angus Clark. Angus has a long serial history of tremendous success behind him with Technolabs and with Omnigon and Winova Wireless, and now he's got Evoasis. That's a UK and San Diego-based company that's building out these electric gas stations, and we hope he comes to a metro tour near you because this is going to change the world. Welcome to Green is Good, Angus Clark.
Thanks, John and Mike. It's a pleasure to be with you both today.
Hey, Angus, while we were doing the lead into you earlier, we were talking about the best way for the United States to get off foreign oil and become energy independent. And basically, the bottom line to the story is still that conservation is the most lucrative avenue. Can you tell us, what your literally visionary and pioneering brand Evoasis is doing and why you're rolling this out now in California and other parts of the United States?
Sure. It's an interesting point you make, Mike. I mean, I heard the other day something that really puts that point to home, and that was that we're importing somewhere around $600 billion worth of oil, and we also seem to have an equal trade deficit every year. So kind of interesting that both those numbers align. We look at our station as being an oasis in the desert, and that's basically where it got its name, Evoasis. We have actually designed it around the same type of elements that are present in a traditional gas station. We have stored energy where in a gas station you have stored fuel. We use renewable energy in our facility where possible. We also bring in renewable energy, literally transport it from wind farms, solar farms, hydro dams, waste-to-energy plants, and actually bring it into the station, use that so that the cars are doing what we call creating a virtuous circle, where the energy that they're using is, in most cases, all green. And that's our goal, is to provide all green energy to vehicles wherever we can. And certainly the current state of manufacturing, the falling prices for solar, wind equipment, and all of those things are conspiring now in our favor. And so we see the opportunity now to push ahead and really start building electric vehicle infrastructure in kind of a normal way.
Well, wait a second. Let's step back for a second. And, obviously your serial entrepreneurship is just, it's not only a track record of being a serial entrepreneur, but it's a track record of all victories. So how did you come up with this concept, and what's the real dream and vision here? How far can you take it, Angus?
Well, we really looked at the early days of the petrol station or gas pump as being a really good historical indicator of how this kind of business would evolve. In the early days, gasoline pumps were sort of at the side of the road. I think everybody can kind of picture in their heads the picture of the country store with a little gasoline pump. And, of course, that worked fine when there was just a few cars on the road. But when Henry Ford came along and started building serious amounts of cars, and people started driving, all over cities, all over towns, the idea really was it was no longer practical to use little pumps dotted here and there. So centralizing the fuel station and drop points was really how the gasoline stations evolved. So we saw, the sort of first evolution of that during the Roosevelt era, when highways were being extended and built. More and more of the stations appeared on the big highways like Highway 66. And then, of course, after World War II, Truman came in and started building our superhighways and freeway systems. And again, the idea was that all these points were sort of centralized, and fuel delivery was practical to those points. And it just kind of allowed it to scale up. So with electric vehicles, we've always looked beyond the sort of early adopter phase towards the mass market and what kind of infrastructure would be necessary that's also infrastructure that can be supported by the electrical utility, or in the absence of them, with green energy.
Got it.
So again, it's all around storing and delivering fuel that's been stored for use during peak times, or when you can create a local market for renewable energy, literally a farmer's market. The local producers from solar fields to wind farms can contribute their locally produced energy to support these stations.
Well, you know, Angus, it's a fascinating idea because as we have talked so many times, and with so many of our guests, there really is not going to be any one single source of a replacement for our addiction to cheap foreign oil. It's going to come from a lot of different sources. So you definitely have got that model worked out. But obviously you've crunched the numbers and you've seen what the sales are for completely electric vehicles right now, and you've looked down the road through the right end of the telescope to see where we're headed. And it would obviously be the numbers are going to support you going on this venture. But in the short term, I guess the question I'm asking right now with hybrid vehicles, where you have gas power, and it's still the traditional petroleum, but also running on stored energy, do you have any gasoline pumps at all at your Evoasis?
We don't contemplate mixing fuel with high voltage.
Okay.
And not that couldn't be done, but we think, the perception of that is probably that it wouldn't be the safest thing in the world. So no, at this time we're not contemplating that. And in fact, if you look at the latest generation of plug-in hybrid vehicles, they are getting bigger batteries and extended range. So the new Prius, I believe, has got a 40-mile electric-only capability. So it's quite practical to just use electric in your normal driving.
Got it.
And I believe the average commute in the U.S. is about 26 miles a day. So you could see where gasoline-powered plug-in would not really need to go and visit the gasoline station that often.
You're absolutely right.
Hey, Angus, talk about some of the partners and the traction that you're getting, and what is your ultimate vision here? Are you going to have 100 of these in California and 1,000 across America, or 1,000 in California and 50,000 across America? How is this going to scale, and what? But start with who are you working with? What other companies are starting to buy in, and where's the traction that you're getting?
We are, working directly and indirectly with a lot of vehicle OEMs.
Okay.
And basically, because while you're a bit car agnostic as a service station, you're also going to need to know their spec.
Right.
And our system is designed to put variable voltage and amperage into each charging point on the station. We have on a normal full-size station 48 level 2 chargers and 24 rapid chargers. So there is quite a lot of points on each station at peak time for cars to be hooked up and getting power.
Got it.
That said, when you store the energy in sufficient quantities underneath the station, you can be a little bit more opportunistic in what type of energy you serve at what time of the day. So one of the things we've done is we've designed our stations to be able to serve grid grade, which is grid delivered fuel power, and also green grade, and in some cases a mix of both. In order to start a corridor where you can go sort of point to point throughout California, for instance,
right,
you need these stations to be sort of 25 miles apart in every direction. Our initial plans at the moment are for 24 stations, and they're dotted around in various counties around California. Probably in around 2013, we'll double that number, and we go from there. So we expect other operators will begin to help,
right,
and begin to start their own brands of service stations, and that also brings up good points about roaming agreements and being able to go to multiple points for service, kind of on the same payment scheme. or your card system or whatever. So
well, you bring up a
much
great
like mobile phones.
Right, but you bring up a great point of competition. Are you the leader in this, or do you have 10 competitors, 2 competitors? What's the marketplace look like? Because this is, Mike and I get to interview a lot of neat people, and we get to see a lot of great pitches. Truly, Angus, you're doing something that is, to us, unbelievably pioneering, but so darn needed.
Well, at the moment, we have seen a station design similar to ours in China, and they actually are building these on their substations.
Wow.
So this is sort of cascading logic, and you begin to look at all the issues around delivering power. An electric vehicle, for instance, a 60 kilowatt-hour battery, has the equivalent power of about anywhere from 3 to 6 days of home energy use in that. If you can imagine lots and lots of cars charging at home, utility companies now have a problem.
Right.
Because it's like they all of a sudden built 20 or 30 more homes on each street.
Right.
So while in the early days, charging at home is practical, over time, as more vehicles appear, we think that the shift is going to go away from home charging, and probably the paradigm there is we don't all have gasoline pumps in our garages either. So
That's true.
That is fascinating. So, but you're saying so the competition's in China, but in terms of the U.S., you are the beginning of this industry here. You are sort of, for lack of better terms, the ground zero.
I like to say, we're the first one that's sort of reflecting all of the issues in one box.
That is so brilliant. Wow. And so rolling this out though, what are the key elements for you in the mass market adoption when, education obviously is critical and we're so thankful of you coming on the show to educate our listeners today. But what else is critical for you to do as you trying to get mass market adoption of this brilliant idea?
Well, as you know, in every new technology, there's the early adopters that sort of pay the price as crash test dummies, and we're seeing that now, obviously, with the first cars coming into the market, like the BYD E6 and the Nissan Leaf.
Right.
We know that there's no one sort of magic bullet, and the more options that you have as a driver, the better you're going to be.
Right.
So there is, I believe, one exception to the rule, and that's rapid charging. So vehicles that come in sort of the mass market second generation versions will almost all have DC rapid charging capability. And that's really the key, I think, to using these vehicles sort of in a very normalized way, where when you stop to fill up, it's a 10-minute wait, and you're doing something else, and it's really not taking a big bite out of your day.
Right.
So home charging fills one void, but it makes the assumption that you have a garage,
right.
You have the available power, and you're going to always charge at home, or in most cases, charge at home.
Right.
In the real world, especially in dense metro areas, most people live in multi-tenant units.
That's right.
They have shared garage space. Most of those garages don't have a lot of power on hand because there's power in there for lighting and various things, but it's not sufficient to do multi-car charging. And so we address really the metro market where you don't always have the option to go home and plug in.
Right.
And if you look at where cars are used, especially electric vehicles, places like London, probably 90% of the people that live in central London don't have garage space. And it's probably true as well in some of the big cities. California has San Francisco as an example, LA, San Diego. So I think 64% of San Diegans live in multi-tenant homes.
Right.
So you can see there's a problem there.
Yeah, and so we let's talk about friendliness. For instance, so many trends start either on the East Coast or the West Coast of California, and so many green trends have started in Europe. Your first stations are going to be here in California. Are you also going to have a beta or a model station in London also, since you are a UK and San Diego-based company?
We are, and they're almost in parallel, launching next year.
Okay.
Our London location is on the former Battersea Power Station site in central London,
Wow.
in the borough of Wandsworth.
Wonderful.
It's an interesting place to be because it's on the river, and we actually deliver our energy containers to the station on barges. And those barges are filled at the river mouth in the Thames Estuary wind farms. So as an example of literally taking renewable energy, storing it, moving it to market, and using it for vehicles. We are looking at similar programs for the San Francisco Bay Area.
Okay.
Not that we're dependent on water movement, but it's a nice green way to move energy. And it's probably, if you start looking at the United States, rail is another great way to move renewable energy around.
So,
and wind farms typically don't all have grid connections, or they're waiting for one.
Right.
So it's a second option for moving renewables to market.
So London and California, what other regions have shown a warm welcome to you that you will be going to after, without giving away any trade secrets? What are the other market-friendly areas for you?
Well, I think Germany has been a leader in renewables. Very high use of solar, and people don't think of Germany as a solar-friendly place because it's cloudy there a lot. But the solar panels work quite well anyway.
Gotcha.
And they're also very much behind DC rapid charging, and they have a lot of extra space. So they're not quite as tight in terms of usable space as, say, London. Most of the German vehicle OEMs, from Daimler to Mercedes and Volkswagen, Porsche, have all announced electric vehicles. So they are a good indicator of early adopters of renewable energy. They have a lot of infrastructure in place, and they have a lot of political will and consumer interest. But we see them as also being a very necessary market to be in.
Angus, if I drive into your model station, one of the first one that you put in California or the second one you put in California, what are other services that I can expect in that station besides charging up my electric car?
Great question. We actually operate on a membership basis. So you literally are a member. That doesn't mean you're not welcome as a guest, because we'll give you a day pass if you're just coming through the area. But the retail is designed so that you can recharge yourself as well as your car. And we like to think that we can provide the same conveniences that you would otherwise have to do somewhere else.
Gotcha.
While you're at our station. So just to give you sort of a quick list of those.
Yeah.
Those are including, obviously, broadband wireless internet access.
Sure.
We have great food and drink on hand. We have mailboxes and printing services, UPS and FedEx drop boxes, dry cleaning services, entertainment, so music and movies are available.
This is great.
For the car, we do diagnostics and safety checks, software updates if necessary. Again, there's just a lot of things you can do. And, one of the points there is that we are member-driven, so if the members collectively tell us they want another service, we'll generally add that service.
Perfect. Angus, we're down to the last minute or so, and we're going to have you back because your story is way too broad just to handle in one show, and we want to do follow-ups and keep our listeners up to speed as to what you're doing, but this is just amazing. Do you have any pearls of wisdom for our listeners out there that are excited about what you're doing? When are you starting? And as an entrepreneur, any last pearls for our entrepreneurs out there that always look for inspiration when they listen to this show?
I would say, look, green is great, and it's also good. Green is the future. Green will put the United States back in a competitive position. I think everybody is sort of chipping in equally, and it's a collective effort, so there is no one solution. And if you're green-minded and you want to be a green consumer, you're chipping in. If you're a green company and you're providing services or products, you're chipping in. It's a collective effort. I would just say, everybody, let's embrace the mindset of getting off the dependence on foreign oil.
So well
and
said.
I'd leave it at that.
So well said. And I want our listeners, please go to Angus's great site, www.evoasis.com. See more about what he's doing. Follow his progress. Angus Clark, you are really a visionary pioneer who's truly driving the green revolution and living proof that green is good.